This is the overview for Futato chapter 31. This chapter, as you can read here, is about the hifil in strong verbs. Now, the hifil is another stem or another pattern, verb pattern. As Futato notes here, the hifil is the third of 7 major verb patterns you'll learn. It accounts for 13% of all the verbs in the Hebrew Bible. So at this point, after this chapter, you will have learned the kal, the pl, and the hifil. And those forms are present in 91% of all verbs in the Hebrew Bible, so that's pretty substantial. Now, the hifil, I think, is one of the easiest verb patterns, verb stems to spot and account for. This is going to be a very brief overview because I've made a separate video on the hifil patterns that will condense this chapter that I think will really show you how easy it is to spot one of these. They're just very definite patterns. For our sake here, though, my advice is that in this chapter you read through everything closely, read through it for understanding. It's important here when you have the hifil pattern, it changes the meaning of verb lemmas. So in the kal, you could have gadal, to be great. The hifil is to magnify. What the hifil is, other grammars will describe it as the causative stem. So if gadal is to be great, the hifil is essentially to cause to be great. In other words, to magnify. Kal, malak, to be king. Hifil would be to cause to be king. In other words, to make king. So on and so forth. Now that works in most lemmas. It doesn't work with all of them. Here, visit and appoint. There's really no quickly discernible causative linkage there. Be holy, make holy, and sanctify. That there you can see one there. But most of the time, if you just know your vocabulary in the kal and you run across a hifil, you can sort of work out the hifil meaning by thinking in these causative terms. Down here he mentions some verbs occur only or mainly in the hifil. They don't have a corresponding kal. You have a few of those. Again, it's not something you need to memorize, but just to be aware of, because in these instances you're just going to have to know this vocabulary meaning with these lemmas. You're not going to be able to build it off of a kal meaning. Form is the thing I have covered in the other video. Again, easy to spot in the perfect. It's the hifil, hi. It's going to have a hi prefix in the perfect. Okay, hiktil, hiktila, hiktalta. You don't even have to really worry about what the second vowel is. If you see that hi and you have your perfect endings, it's a hifil perfect. That's how easy it is. Endings, of course, are always the same. They're not going to change. The imperfect, you don't have a hi in the imperfect because the imperfect is the prefixed stem. You already have a prefix. Remember in the kal it's yiktol, tiktol, tiktol, tiktali, ektol, so on and so forth. What happens here is you have the same prefix consonants. Those aren't going to change. But here you have a vowel pattern to memorize. You have the prefix with an A-class vowel followed by I-class, hirik yod. Prefix with A-class followed by I-class is a hifil imperfect. That's what it is. Again, these are not difficult. The imperative, I think you'll actually find these easier than other imperatives. We've been forming the imperative by lopping off the prefix of the imperfect, and then you just have to kind of tell what it is with what's left. Here, in the hifil, you get your hey prefix back. Remember the perfect, it was hi. In the imperative, it's hey with A class, ha. So if you see ha with your verb lemma, that's either going to be a hifil imperative, and again you got to watch your endings here. It could also, look down here, it could also be a hifil infinitive construct or absolute. Now, the infinitive absolute here, you notice, is identical to the imperative. So if you see ha with hirik yod, that will be a hifil infinitive construct. Okay, so you really, we're almost out of the chapter. There's just not much that you have to really remember here. Participle, well, what do you think the mark of the participle is? It's the mem prefix, just like it was in PL, except with PL we had mem with shava. Here we have mem with A-class vowel followed by I-class. That is, by definition, a hifil participle. It's that simple. Cohortative, same as the imperfect. Imperfect prefix, A-class followed by I-class. But, of course, we have our cohortative ending, the comet's hay. Nothing unusual there. You'll notice here, when we have the imperfect, when it goes to jussive, jussive is always the shorter vowel form. So imperfect would be, here we have prefix A-class followed by I-class, but the I-class is going to be here yod in third person. Remember, the jussive is only concerned about the third person. Jussives will reduce this to the sera. So instead of here yod, we have sera. But we have prefix, A-class, I-class. The sera is an I-class vowel. Remember, I told you long ago that it would be really, really worth your while to memorize the vowel classes. What's an A-class vowel? What's an I-class vowel? What's a U-class vowel? Here's the payoff. Okay, if you know the vowel classes, you will be able to peg verb stems, verb patterns, by the patterns of the vowel classes. They will be just telltale signs. It will just, you know, cry out, I'm a PL, I'm a HIFIL, I'm a this, I'm a that. This is the payoff time. So God forbid if you haven't memorized the vowel classes at this point. It should only take you 5 or 10 minutes. But if you do that, it's really going to be valuable from this point on. So now we're at the vocabulary. That is chapter 31 in Futato. So that's all you need to do. Just give this a close read. Again, when you know your vocabulary now, make sure that you memorize the hifil meanings if he gives you one. Again, think causatively if you know that lemma from the Cal. That will help you out in translation. And be sure to watch the other video where I go over the hifil patterns. So that's the end of the overview for Futato chapter 31.